The abandonment asterisk, the desert was silent, except for the dry wind that scraped across the red sand. Two suns hung in the sky like burning eyes. Staring down without mercy, the air shimmered with heat. And the ground was hot enough to burn skin in the middle of that endless wasteland. A small figure lay half buried in the sand. She was an alien child, no more than 12 seasons old. Her skin was pale silver, now cracked and bleeding from the sun. Her legs twisted at odd angles. Broken long ago and never healed, she breathed in small, sharp gasps, like a dying bird. Beside her stood a tall figure wrapped in black armor. His cloak flapped in the dry wind like the wings of a shadow. This was her father, the Baron, a powerful warlord among their kind. His face was cold, carved from stone, and his eyes showed no warmth. He looked down at her with silence. No pity, no sadness, only judgment. "You are weak," he said, his voice as dry as the desert wind. "You are not worthy of my blood." She tried to speak, but only a broken sound came out. Her throat was too dry, her body too weak. Her hands reached toward him, shaking, but he stepped back, as if her touch would poison him. "You will not slow our bloodline," he said. "You will not carry our name." Then he turned away. His black boots sank into the hot sand as he walked. Step by step, his figure grew smaller. His shadow grew longer, and then it was gone. The girl's eyes filled with tears that quickly dried on her burning skin. She whispered, "Father," but her voice was lost in the wind. He did not turn back. He did not look. He never would. She lay still for a long time. The suns climbed higher, and the heat grew worse. Her mouth was dry as stone. Her lips split and bleeding. Her heart beat slow. Weak, like a fading drum, she tried to move. But pain shot through her body like fire. Her broken legs would not answer her. The wind blew sand across her face. It covered her silver skin. Soon she looked like part of the desert. Forgotten, lost, her father had left her to die. She thought about the palace she once lived in. Marble walls and crystal towers, servants who never looked her in the eyes. Everyone whispered that she was broken. She could hear their voices even now. Useless, shame, waste of blood. She closed her eyes. Darkness was soft, and the pain was far away inside it. She let it pull her down like deep water. She thought maybe this was better. Maybe ending was easier than being left behind. Then, a sound, a crunch of boots on sand, slow and heavy. Not like her father's sharp steps. This was different. Her eyes opened a little. The suns burned her vision, but in the white light, a shadow moved. A tall shape stood over her. Blocking the suns, it was not one of her kind. The shape was strange, wrapped in torn cloth and faded leather. The figure knelt beside her. A hand touched her forehead, warm, alive. Not cold like her father's armor, she blinked, her vision blurry. The figure pulled a small bottle from his pack. He poured cool water across her cracked lips. The water felt like life. She tried to drink, coughed, and then drank again. He spoke, but the words were soft and strange. Not her language, she did not understand. But his tone was gentle, not like the harsh voices of her people. He looked at her legs, broken and thin. His eyes were calm, not afraid. He lifted her slowly, carefully. His arms were strong but gentle. She felt weightless as he held her. No one had ever held her like that before. She tried to speak, but no words came. He smiled just a little, like he understood anyway. Then he stood and began walking. His boots pressed deep tracks in the sand, carrying her across the endless red world. The desert wind rose behind them, covering the place where she had lain, erasing the shape of her small body in the sand. It was as if she had never been there at all, as if the desert had swallowed her, but she was still alive, carried by a stranger with human eyes. She looked up at him through half-closed eyes. His face was hidden by cloth. But she saw his eyes, blue like the distant sky. Not cold, not cruel. There was something in them she had never seen before. Something that burned brighter than the sun's. Hope. Then her head fell against his chest. The last thing she heard was his heartbeat. Strong, steady, alive, and then darkness. Asterisk the human stranger, asterisk the wind howled like an angry spirit behind them. The human walked on without looking back. Each step sank deep into the burning red sand. His shadow stretched long, carrying her small broken body across the endless desert. She drifted in and out of darkness. Sometimes she heard his boots crunching on the sand. Sometimes only silence and her own slow heartbeat. Her head rested against his chest. His heartbeat was strong, steady. Like a drum that would never stop. Hours passed. The two suns crawled across the sky like crawling flames. Heat waves danced around them. Her skin burned under the light. But the human kept walking. Step by step, he never spoke, he never slowed. At last, as the suns began to sink low, he stopped near the bones of an old metal wreck. It looked like the broken ribcage of some giant beast, half buried in sand. The metal was black and rusted, but it gave shade. He lowered her gently into the shadow. Her body felt like dry paper, too light, too weak. She tried to sit up, but pain roared through her legs. She gasped, and her vision blurred. He raised his hands slowly to show he meant no harm. Then he knelt, opened his old leather pack, and pulled out strange human tools. He had a small round machine that hummed softly. He pressed it against her skin. It sprayed cool mist, numbing her wounds. Then he wrapped her thin legs in shining strips of fabric that hardened like stone. His hands were careful, patient, not like the harsh hands of her people. There was no disgust in his eyes, only calm focus when he finished. He gave her water again. This time she drank more. Cool drops ran down her chin, and she licked them with a dry tongue. Her voice was just a whisper. Why? He tilted his head, not understanding. She touched her chest weakly and pointed at him. Why? Save. His eyes softened. He pointed at his own chest and said a word slowly. Human. The sound was strange and heavy. She blinked at him. He smiled faintly and repeated. Human. She copied it, broken and unsure. Who? Man. He nodded, pleased. Then he pointed at her, waited. She hesitated. Then whispered her name in her own tongue. It was soft and musical, almost like a bell. He repeated it badly, his voice rough. She gave a small laugh. The first sound of joy in her whole life. It shocked her. It shocked him, too, for a moment. The desert felt less empty. Night came fast. The two suns sank below the horizon. The air turned cold. Stars filled the black sky. So many, they looked like silver dust. He built a fire from dry thorn branches. The flames crackled and hissed like small spirits dancing. She watched him from her place on the sand. Wrapped in his spare cloak, his face glowed in the firelight. His skin was brown from the sun. Marked with small scars, his eyes were blue. But not like cold ice, more like deep water. He ate something from a small metal box and offered her a piece. She sniffed it, then nibbled. It was soft and salty. Her stomach hurt with hunger. And soon, she ate it all. Afterward, he began to speak in his language, slowly. He pointed at things sand, fire, sky, and said their human words. Sand, fire, sky, she listened. Trying to copy, her voice was weak but steady. She pointed at the stars, he said. Stars, she whispered it back. Stars, for a while. They sat in silence under that endless sky. The fire made their shadows dance on the metal wreck behind them. The night was cold, but she felt warm inside. No one had ever taught her anything before. No one had ever stayed. Her thoughts began to wander like slow birds. She remembered her father's cold eyes, his back turning away, the sound of his boots fading. Then she looked at the human. Still awake, still watching the fire. Why was he here? Why had he saved her? She wanted to ask, but her words were too few. Instead, she watched his hands. They were large, scarred, and steady. They had carried her across death itself. At last, her eyelids grew heavy. Sleep pulled her down like soft water before her eyes closed. She saw him look up at the sky. His eyes were sad, as if he carried his own ghosts. Then darkness took her, and for the first time, her dreams were not filled with fear. The suns rose again, painting the sand blood orange. She woke to the sound of his boots moving. He was already awake. Already packing his things, she sat up slowly, pain stabbing through her legs. But something was different. Her legs were wrapped. Straight and firm, they still hurt. But not like fire, more like dull thunder. She could feel strength there. Waiting like a seed under cold soil, he noticed her watching. He gave a small nod and tapped his chest. "Strong," he said. She repeated it, softly. Strong, a small smile touched her lips. A new word, a new thought. Maybe she could be. The human lifted her onto his back again. Then they left the wreck behind. The desert stretched before them like an ocean of red glass, but this time it did not seem endless. She was not alone anymore. Far away, beyond the dunes, a black-winged scout drone watched them from the sky. Its red eye glowed. Recording, it turned silently and flew back toward the mountains, toward the Baron's palace, toward the father who believed she was dead. A spark of life asterisk. The desert wind was softer that morning. The air was cool for a short time. The two suns were still low, hiding behind thin silver clouds. Shadows stretched long across the red dunes. The human walked silently, his boots crunching on the sand. The girl rested on his back. Wrapped in his cloak, her eyes were open now. Not dull and empty like before. They followed the changing shapes of the land as they passed. The sharp ridges of stone, the long scars where old rivers had died. There was still pain in her body, but her mind felt lighter. After many hours, they reached a canyon hidden between the dunes. Walls of dark stone rose on both sides. A thin ribbon of water ran through the middle. Green moss clung to the rocks, glowing faintly in the shadow. It was the first living color she had seen in many days. The human lowered her gently onto a flat rock. She stared at the stream. Clear water, cool and soft. It was like a dream. She touched it with her fingers. It felt like life. The human filled a metal cup and gave it to her. She drank deeply. Water ran down her chin. And she laughed quietly. The sound surprised her. It surprised him too. He smiled just a little. He set down his pack and began building a small camp. He placed metal poles into the ground. They opened into thin silver sheets that shimmered like heat waves. In moments, a small shelter stood. It glowed faint blue under the sun like a bubble of air. She watched him move, fast and sure. He worked like water flowing. Silent, strong, always steady. No hesitation, no cruelty. Just purpose. When he finished, he came back to her side. He crouched. And his eyes studied her wrapped legs. Then he tapped his chest. "Try," he said. He pointed at her. Then at the ground, "Try." Her heart jumped. She shook her head slowly. Her legs had not carried her in many cycles. Pain had been her only memory, but his eyes stayed calm and warm. He waited, patient like stone. She took a breath. She placed her hands on the rock. Her arms trembled. Slowly, she pushed her body upright. Her legs screamed with pain. Her teeth clenched. Her vision blurred, but she stayed up. For a few heartbeats, she stayed. He reached out to steady her, but did not lift her. He only stood close enough if she fell. Far enough to let her try, she gasped and lowered herself back down. Sweat on her face, tears in her eyes. But there was something else there too. A small, bright spark. She had done it. Even for a moment, she had stood. The human nodded once, a small sign. But it felt bigger than the sun's. All that day he trained her. Slow movements, crawling, pushing. Then trying to kneel, then sit without falling. Each time she failed, each time he said the same word. Again, she repeated it, voice shaking. Again, the sound gave her strength. It was like magic, a word that meant she was not finished. Hours passed, her body shook like dry leaves. But she kept going. Her breath was fire. Her legs were stone, but something new grew inside her. A small seed, breaking through dark soil when night came. She collapsed on the blanket he laid out for her. She had no strength left to move, but inside, she felt different. Not like the broken thing her father left. More like a blade being shaped in fire. The human sat beside the small fire. He cleaned strange metal parts from his pack. Weapons, maybe, or tools. They gleamed sharp in the firelight. His face was calm, but his eyes were distant. Watching the shadows, listening, she followed his gaze and saw nothing. Only the dark canyon and the glowing moss. But she felt something too. A quiet weight in the air, like unseen eyes far away. She pushed the thought away. Her eyelids were heavy. Sleep came fast. This time her dreams were full of stars. She dreamed of standing tall under them. And walking, and running, and flying. The next day the human gave her strange curved sticks. He strapped them to her legs like second bones. They locked around her knees and feet. When she stood, the sticks held her straight. She gasped in shock. Her body was tall again, her eyes almost level with his chest. "Walk," he said gently. She swallowed her fear. She stepped, one foot, then the other. The sticks clicked on the stone. Her legs shook, but held. She laughed out loud. The sound echoed off the canyon walls like music. The human smiled, just for a moment. "Strong," he said, tapping her chest. "Strong," she answered, louder this time. All that day she walked between the rocks. Slow, careful, falling often each time he helped her up. Never scolding, never angry, only calm, always calm. She began to speak more human words. Fire, sky, walk, live. Each word was like a small piece of armor, building something new inside her. When the suns fell again, she stood on the canyon wall. She looked at the desert beyond. The endless red sea of sand, it no longer felt like a grave. It felt like something she could cross, far above, high in the dark sky. A black metal drone floated silently. Its red eye glowed as it watched. It sent quiet signals through the void, across mountains and dead plains. Back to the Baron's fortress of glass and stone. There, deep inside cold halls. The Baron listened to the signal. His golden eyes narrowed. The drone had found her, his lost daughter. Still alive, with a human, his voice was sharp as glass. "Prepare the hunters," he said. "She will not shame my blood again, down in the canyon." The human and the girl sat by their fire. She leaned against his side, eyes heavy but bright with new life. He stared into the flames, quiet. He did not know that far above them. The storm of her past was already coming, and she only knew one thing. Tomorrow, she would walk again. And this time, she would not fall. Asterisk the training begins. Asterisk the canyon had become their world. Hidden from the burning desert winds, guarded by high black walls and whispering shadows. Here, the girl found the first place that felt safe. But safety could not last forever, and the human knew it. Each morning he woke before the suns. The air still cold, the stars still shining. He sat by the dying fire, watching the canyon mouth, listening for footsteps that were not his own. Then, when the first rays touched the stone, he would begin. The girl woke to his voice each day. Soft, steady, like water on stone. Up, he said. Walk, again. Her legs were still weak and stiff. But the metal braces he built for her were strong. He had shaped them from broken parts of his tools, light as bone, hard as steel. Each step she took echoed in the stone canyon like the beat of a drum. At first, her body shook like dry branches in the wind, but the human never rushed her. He moved beside her like a shadow, silent, steady, always ready to catch her if she fell. Step by step, she learned to stand taller. Step by step, she learned to trust her legs again. The fear that lived inside her bones began to fade. Not all at once, but slowly, like ice melting under sunlight. She stumbled, she fell, she bled, but each time he said the same word. Again, and she rose, again and again. The human trained her body first, then her mind. He placed smooth stones on her head and made her walk, balancing them until she learned control. He tied her arms with cloth while she walked to build strength. He gave her sticks and taught her to block, to strike, slow and careful at first. Then faster, like desert wind. At night, her muscles screamed. Her breath came like fire, but she never stopped. Because for the first time in her life, someone believed she could do it. He also gave her words, new human words, every day. Fast, strong, fight, live. She repeated them with fierce eyes. Each word became part of her. Each word was a small blade cutting away the old voice of her father. The voice that had called her broken, useless, ashamed now. When that voice whispered in her mind, she crushed it with new words. Strong, live. One day he placed a cracked mirror in front of her. It leaned against the canyon wall. She stared at her reflection for a long time. She hardly knew the girl in the glass. This girl stood straight, her legs wrapped in shining metal. Her arms thin but hard with new muscle. Her silver skin no longer dull, but bright under the suns. Her eyes were sharp, alive. The human stood behind her. Silent, then he spoke softly. Not broken. She whispered it back. Not broken. It was the first time she truly believed it. Far away, high above the black mountains, a hunter ship cut through the clouds. Silent, black as oil. Inside, alien soldiers stood in lines. Their armor cold and sharp like knives. Their eyes golden like their master, the Baron at the front. The leader read the message glowing in his wrist screen. Locate the lost one. Erase the shame. He looked at the desert map. A red blinking light showed her last location. They were close now, only 2 days away. The Baron wanted her body returned. Or burned to asterisk back in the canyon. The girl trained harder. The human had made her a weapon, a long staff of black wood with a sharp blade at one end. It was taller than her, heavy at first. But soon it moved like part of her body. He showed her how to spin it. How to block with one end and strike with the other. How to move her feet fast on the sand. How to use her small size as speed, fast, he said. Never stop. She practiced until sweat dripped from her silver skin like rain, until her hands blistered, until her arms ached like stone, and still she went on. Because now there was fire inside her, a fire she had never known that night. They sat by the fire under the silver stars. She asked a question in broken human words. Why? You help. The human looked at the flames, his blue eyes soft and far away. He did not answer at first. Then he said, quietly, long ago, someone saved me. She waited for more, but he said nothing else. Only stared into the fire like it was the past. His face was calm, but there was sadness buried deep inside his eyes. She wanted to ask who had saved him, but she stayed silent. Because she understood something now. He had carried pain once too, and still, he stood still. He walked, still, he saved. At dawn, they climbed to the canyon rim. She stood on the high rocks, wind pulling at her cloak. She looked out at the sea of red sand. Her eyes hard, steady, not afraid anymore. The human placed his hand on her shoulder. Soon, he said, strong. She nodded. Her heart steady like a drum, she was ready to leave the canyon. Ready to face the world that had thrown her away, but as they turned to go back down, a thin flash of red light passed across the sand far away. A scout drone, watching from the edge of sight. It vanished behind the dunes before either of them saw it. And beyond the horizon, the hunters were coming. Their ship cut the sky like a black knife. They would reach the canyon by nightfall tomorrow. That evening, the human gave her her final test. He tied a rope high across the canyon, made her walk across it with only her staff for balance. She shook with fear at first, but his voice rose from below, calm and strong. Balance. Again, she stepped. 1 step, 2 steps. Her heart thundered. Wind howled below, but she walked step by step across the thin rope until she reached the other side. She lifted her staff high and shouted one word, strong. Her voice echoed through the stone. The human smiled, not with his mouth, but with his eyes, proud and quiet. That night she did not sleep. She stood on the canyon rim with her staff in hand. Stars above, wind around her, she thought of her father's cold eyes. And she whispered to the desert, I am not broken. She did not know the hunters were less than a day away. She did not know her old world was about to find her, but she was ready, and this time, she would not run shadows of the past the night before the storm was too quiet. The wind held its breath. Even the canyon stones seemed to listen. The girl did not sleep. She stood on the rim, her cloak whipping in the dark wind, her staff gripped in her hands, her silver eyes scanning the horizon again and again. Something deep inside her whispered, they are coming, they are close. She did not know how she knew, but she felt it like a shadow pressing on her skin, cold and heavy, like the memory of her father's voice. Far away, across the desert, a black ship sliced through the darkness. Silent as a blade, inside, the hunters stood like statues. Their armor was dark gold and black, carved with the Baron's crest. Their faces hidden behind metal masks, only their glowing eyes showed they were alive. At the front stood their commander, tall, thin. With scars like lightning across his throat, he watched the glowing map on his wrist. The blinking red signal pulsed near the canyon. She lives, he said. Not for long, no one answered. They only checked their rifles and blades. Their orders were clear. Find the Baron's lost daughter. End the shame. Bring back her body or her ashes. In the canyon, the human woke before dawn. He found the girl still on the rim, her eyes dark with worry. They are coming, she said in broken human words. He said nothing at first, only stared out at the desert. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, fear coiled inside her chest like a snake. Her legs trembled, her throat felt dry as sand. What? We do, she whispered. He turned to her, his face calm. But his blue eyes like cold fire. Fight, he said. The word hit her like a hammer. Her breath caught. Fight. The old her would have run. The girl who crawled in the dust, who begged her father not to leave her. That girl would have hidden, but she was not that girl anymore. The human led her down to the canyon floor. They trained in silence, fast and fierce. Every move sharper than the last. Sand flew under her feet. Her staff cut the air like lightning. He struck at her with a wooden sword. She blocked, dodged, spun. Her metal legs flashed under the rising suns. Faster, he said. Again, her arms ached. Her chest burned, but she did not stop, because she knew this was not just training. This was survival. At last, he stepped back. Breathing hard, he nodded once. Strong, she stood straight, sweat shining on her silver skin, heart hammering like drums. For the first time, she truly believed she might win. At noon, they rested under the rocks. The human opened a small metal box. Inside lay strange black spheres. Smoke bombs, he said. He showed her how to throw them, how to hide in the smoke and strike from shadows. Then he gave her a small blade. Sharp and curved, he pressed it into her hands. Last chance weapon, he said. Close, fast. Quiet, she nodded. She tied it to her leg with a strip of cloth. The cold weight of it made her feel steady. Safe by nightfall. The wind carried a new sound. A low hum, far away at first, then louder, closer. The human froze. He raised his head like a wild animal, listening to danger. Then he spoke. They're here. The girl felt her heart slam inside her chest. Her hands trembled. The sound grew until it filled the sky. A black shadow passed over the canyon mouth, the barren ship, silent and deadly. It circled like a hawk, then drifted down beyond the dunes. Lights flashing red in the dark, dust rising in waves. It landed less than a mile from the canyon. The hunters moved like ghosts, silent, fast. Their golden eyes glowing through the dark, their boots left no sound on the sand. They found the remains of the girl's broken chair, half buried near the dunes. The commander knelt. He touched the metal with his clawed glove. She walked, he said. Impossible, hissed one of the hunters. Not anymore, the commander said, his golden eyes cold. Find her, they spread out like black spiders across the sand. Blades ready. Their ship stayed behind, its red lights blinking like a heart in the dark. Deep inside the canyon, the human built traps, silent, fast. He wove tripwires from thin metal. He planted smoke bombs in cracks in the rocks. He painted dark marks on the canyon floor to guide their steps. The girl watched him with wide eyes, fear still crawling in her stomach, but under the fear was fire. She would not let them take her back. She would not crawl again when the work was done. They sat together in the darkness. No fire, no words, only waiting. She felt his calm like a shield around her, even as fear gnawed at her bones. He looked at her at last, his voice quiet. They will come at dawn. She nodded. Her hands gripped her staff until her knuckles ached. Are you afraid? He asked. She thought for a long time, then whispered, yes. But I will fight. He smiled faintly. Good, he said, above them. Hidden in the rocks, a small drone watched. Its golden eye blinking. It sent a signal back to the hunters. Target located. The commander's cold voice hissed in reply. Wait for dawn. Kill the human. Bring the girl alive. The hunters crouched in the darkness around the canyon. Silent, waiting, their glowing eyes never blinking. The girl did not sleep. She lay awake under the cold stars, listening to her heart, feeling the fear. But holding the fire tighter, once she whispered to the wind. I am not broken. The words vanished into the night, but they stayed burning in her chest. At the canyon mouth, the human stood like stone, watching the dark horizon, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. He did not move, did not speak, only waited. The desert was silent, but the silence was heavy, sharp, like the breath before a scream, and in that silence, as the last stars faded and the first light touched the sand, the hunters began to move, silent, fast, closing in on the canyon from all sides. The battle had not begun yet, but it was already coming, like a wave, like a storm, like the past itself returning to drag her down. She rose slowly, staff in hand, eyes hard as stone, heart steady, ready, this time. She would not run. Asterisk the ambush, asterisk the first light of dawn was red. Like blood spilling across the sand, the canyon lay silent. Cold shadows still clinging to its black walls. But the silence was not peace. It was the sharp, waiting silence of a trap about to spring. The girl stood on the canyon rim, her cloak snapping in the chill wind, her metal legs humming softly. Her staff gripped tight in her hands, far below. The human stood in the shadow of a stone pillar, his sword drawn, his eyes like frozen fire. He did not move. He did not blink. They were waiting, and the hunters were coming. The first hunter appeared like a ghost in the rising light. Black armor, golden eyes, moving low across the sand. Then another, and another, until 10 of them crouched at the canyon mouth, silent as death. The commander raised his clawed hand. They stopped. His golden eyes burned in the dawn light. "She is inside," he whispered. "Kill the human. Bring her alive." They slid into the canyon like shadows, their blades whispering as they were drawn. They moved fast, but the human had been faster. The first wire trap snapped like a scream. A rock slide crashed from above. 2 hunters vanished under a rain of stone. The others leaped aside, hissing, their golden eyes flashing. Smoke burst from hidden cracks in the rocks, thick and black. It swallowed the canyon floor in seconds. The hunters cursed, blinded, then the human struck. He dropped from the high ledge like a hawk. Silent, sudden, his sword flashed silver in the smoke. 1 hunter fell without a sound. Another turned too slow. The sword cut through his armor like paper. He fell in 2 pieces. The girl's heart pounded like thunder. She leaped from the rim, her metal legs slamming into the stone below. She spun her staff like a storm, smoke wrapped around her like a cloak. She moved like lightning, fast, silent. A hunter lunged at her from the mist. She ducked. Her staff cracked across his knee. He howled and fell. She spun and drove the blade into his chest. The shock jolted up her arms. But she held steady. She pulled her weapon free. The hunter collapsed. "Move." The human shouted. She darted through the smoke, breath burning, her fear gone. Only fire remained. The hunters regrouped. The commander roared, "Spread out. Burn them out." Flames burst from their rifles. Fire lit the canyon walls. Smoke and sparks filled the air. Heat scorched her face. She ducked behind a boulder as stones shattered under gunfire. Her heart hammered, her hands shook. She forced herself to breathe, focus, fast. The human appeared beside her like a shadow. Blood on his arm, but his eyes still calm. "We move now," he said. He threw a smoke bomb. It burst in black clouds. They ran, sand flying under their feet. A hunter dropped from above, blade raised. The girl slid on her knees under his strike. Her staff slashed his legs. He crashed to the ground. She drove her blade into his throat. Hot blood sprayed across the sand. She rose, shaking, breath ragged, but her eyes fierce. The human nodded once. "Good," he said. More hunters poured from the canyon mouth, golden eyes glowing through the smoke. They hissed in their alien tongue, their blades flashing. The human and the girl stood back to back, trapped between the canyon walls, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The human whispered, "Stay close." Then he moved. He was a storm, his sword a silver flash. Every strike perfect. Fast, a hunter lunged head, gone in one blow. Another swung from behind. He twisted, stabbed backward. The blade found the gap in the armor. The girl fought like fire, fast, wild. Her staff spun in arcs of death. She ducked low, leaped high. Her metal legs slammed into a hunter's chest. He flew back into the rock with a crack. They fought as one, shadow and flame, steel and fire, each move flowing into the next. Their enemies fell like black leaves in a storm. But still more came. There were too many. Even the human began to slow, his arm bleeding, his breath ragged. The commander stepped forward, taller than the others. Eyes like molten gold, his claws gleamed. He pointed at the girl. "Take her," he hissed, for hunters charged. They crashed into her like a wave. She blocked one, dodged another. But the third slammed her against the stone. Pain exploded through her ribs. Her staff fell from her hands. The fourth grabbed her arms. They dragged her to her knees. No. She screamed, she kicked, thrashed. But they were too strong. Tears blurred her vision. Fear ripped through her chest. Not again, not again. Then she heard his voice. Calm, strong, fight. The human came like a blade through wind. He crashed into the hunters holding her. His sword cut one in half. Blood sprayed the stones. She tore her arm free. Grabbed the blade strapped to her leg and slashed. The curved steel ripped across a hunter's throat. He fell choking. She snatched her staff from the ground. Spun, struck the last one across the skull. He dropped like stone. She stood gasping, covered in blood and dust, her eyes blazing, her fear gone. Only fire, only fight. The commander hissed in fury. His golden eyes burning, he leaped at the human, claws flashing like lightning. Steel clashed on steel, sparks showered the canyon. They moved too fast to see. Sword against claws. Strike, block, strike, block. The air rang with the sound of death. The human fought like a shadow, silent, fast. But the commander was stronger. He slammed his claw into the human's chest. Blood sprayed, the human staggered back. Fell to one knee. "Kill him," the commander hissed. He raised his claws, but the girl moved first. She ran with a scream that shook the stones. Her staff spun like a storm. She leaped high. Metal legs blazing in the sun, she struck down with all her strength. The blade of her staff tore through the commander's shoulder. He roared in shock and pain. His claws slashed her side. She screamed, but held on. She twisted her staff. The blade cut deeper. The commander fell to one knee. The human rose behind him. Sword flashing, one clean strike. The commander's head rolled across the stones. Silence crashed down like thunder. The last hunters froze. Their eyes wide, their leader dead. They turned and fled, vanishing into the smoke. Their black ship roared to life, lifting from the sand. It rose into the red dawn and was gone. The canyon fell silent. Only the wind moved. The girl stood shaking, blood on her skin. Her staff dripping red, her side burning with pain. But her eyes were clear, bright, alive. The human limped to her side, blood soaking his chest. But his eyes calm, proud. "You fought," he said. She breathed hard, then whispered, "Yes." He nodded once. Strong, she looked down at her shaking hands. She had killed. She had survived. She was no longer the broken thing her father left. She was something new, something alive, something powerful. Above them, the sun rose, turning the canyon gold. She stood tall on the blood-stained stone, staff in hand, heart steady, and whispered, "I am not broken." The Baron returns. The desert was quiet again. Too quiet, the hunters were gone. Their black ship only a fading shadow on the horizon. The canyon smelled of smoke and blood. Broken armor lay scattered across the stone like dead insects. The girl stood at the canyon rim. Wind whipping her torn cloak, blood dry on her silver skin. Her staff gripped tight. She had survived. She had fought. She had won. But deep inside, she knew it was not over. Somewhere far beyond the dunes. He would hear, he would come, the Baron, her father. In the silent heart of a black fortress buried under the golden mountains, the Baron stood alone, tall, cold. carved from shadow and gold, eyes like molten suns. His armor etched with the stories of 1,000 wars. A shattered drone knelt before him. Its screen flickered with the final images of the canyon battle. Hunters falling, the commander's head rolling across the stone. The girl standing tall, alive, defiant. The Baron said nothing for a long time, only watched the image of his daughter. The child he had abandoned, the broken thing he had left to die. Now she stood like a warrior, blade in hand, fire in her eyes. A faint smile touched his lips. Cold and sharp, she lived, he whispered. Then the smile vanished. She defied me. He turned to the shadows behind his throne. Ready my ship, he said. Alone, he would not send soldiers this time. This was not a hunt. This was judgment. The girl felt him coming before she saw the ship. It was like a shadow falling across her heart. Heavy, cold, the air itself seemed to shiver. She stood on the rim, watching the far horizon. The human stood beside her, silent, calm. But his eyes sharp like steel. Who is he? He asked quietly. She swallowed hard. My father, she whispered. The human's jaw tightened. He said nothing. But his hand closed slowly around the hilt of his sword. The sky darkened. A black shape rose from the horizon like a storm. Wings of fire trailed behind it. The air shook with its roar. Sand blew in wild waves across the canyon. The Baron's ship descended like a falling star, black as death, gold lights glowing like eyes. It struck the desert with the force of a hammer. Dust boiled around it. Heat washed over the canyon like fire. The girl's legs trembled. Her throat felt dry as bone. Memories crashed into her like waves. The golden throne, his cold voice calling her weak. The day he left her screaming in the sand. Broken, her hands shook. Fear clawed at her heart. But under the fear was fire, stronger than ever. She gripped her staff tighter. I will not run, she whispered. The human's voice was quiet. I will stand with you. The Baron stepped from his ship. Tall as the canyon walls, his golden cloak rippling in the burning wind. Each step cracked the stone under his feet. His eyes burned like twin suns. They locked on her. Cold, endless, and full of rage. He said her name like a curse. You live. She stood straight, her heart hammering. Yes, she said. Her voice shook, but she did not look away. The Baron's gaze drifted to the human. You, he hissed, a worm. Who teaches my shame to crawl? The human stood calm. Sword in hand, I taught her to stand, he said. The Baron's eyes narrowed. Then you will die first. He moved like lightning, one moment on the sand. The next in front of them, faster than sight. His golden blade flashed. The human blocked just in time. Steel screamed. The shock threw him back across the stones. The girl leaped between them, staff spinning. She struck at her father. He caught the blade in his claws. Snapped it like bone. The broken staff fell in pieces. Her heart dropped, but her fire did not go out. She drew the small curved blade from her leg. Charged with a scream, the Baron swatted her aside like a fly. She hit the stone hard. Pain exploded through her side. Her vision blurred. The human rose, bleeding. He charged. Their blades clashed again and again. Each strike like thunder. The Baron was stronger, faster. But the human did not fall. He moved with quiet fury, each blow to protect her. The girl dragged herself to her feet. Her body screamed with pain, but her heart burned. She watched the human fight. Bleeding, broken, still standing, still protecting her. And she understood this was what he had given her. Not strength, not speed, but choice. She could run, or she could rise. She rose. She climbed the broken rocks, high above the canyon floor. Her legs ached. Blood ran down her side, but her fire pushed her on below. The Baron slammed the human to the ground. His golden blade raised for the killing strike. The girl leaped, a scream tearing from her chest. She fell from the sky like a comet. Her blade aimed for his heart. The Baron spun, too slow. Her blade plunged deep into his shoulder. Black blood burst out, he roared. His claws slashed her chest. Pain blinded her, but she held on. She twisted the blade deeper, not broken. She screamed. The human surged up from the ground. His sword flashed. It cut across the Baron's chest. Armor cracked. Golden blood sprayed. The Baron staggered. Rage in his blazing eyes. How dare you? He roared. The girl pulled her blade free. She and the human stood together, side by side, broken, bleeding. But unyielding, the Baron charged. The earth shook. Sand exploded under his feet. They moved as one. The human struck low. The girl struck high, steel and fire, shadow and flame. The Baron swung like a storm, blades clashing, sparks screaming, stone cracking under their feet. Then the girl saw it, a crack in his armor over his heart. She screamed. Now? The human fainted left. The Baron turned, and she drove her blade with all her strength. Straight into the crack, through armor, through flesh. The Baron gasped, golden eyes wide. The fire went out, slowly, like dying suns. He fell to his knees, blood black on the stones. He looked at her, not with hate, but with something almost like wonder. You are mine, he whispered. Then he fell. And the desert was silent. The sun rose over the canyon. Gold spilling across the stones, the Baron lay still, broken, gone. The girl stood trembling, blood on her hands. Her heart a storm, but her eyes calm. The human stood beside her, wounded, silent, but alive. He looked at her with quiet pride. You ended it, he said. She stared at the body of her father, the shadow that had ruled her life. Then she turned from him, step by step. She walked out of the canyon. The wind lifted her torn cloak. The sun lit her silver skin like fire, each step steady, strong. I am not broken, she whispered. The human followed, side by side. Two survivors walking into the new light, leaving the shadow of the past behind them. The desert spread endless before them, bright, wild, full of unknown paths. And for the first time, she was not afraid.